Created with free version for non-commercial use.
In this lesson, we will learn how to apply rounded corners to our elements, which would otherwise end with perfect 90-degree corners. Here we are in the web browser. This is an example page. And let's imagine that we want these blue boxes to have rounded corners. The blue boxes are elements which have a class of box A, so we can simply add new declarations within this rule to target the boxes. To give them rounded corners, we can use a property named border radius. Let's begin with a value of 10 pixels. So if I save and refresh, we can see that the four corners of the boxes are now rounded. If we decide that they aren't round enough, we can simply increase the value. So we can bump this up from 10 to 25 pixels. Now we do not have to have perfectly uniform curves for all four corners. So currently we are providing a single value for the border radius property, but if we provide two values, 10 pixels space 25 pixels, the web browser will use the first value of 10 for the top left and bottom right corners, and it will use the second value of 25 pixels for the top right and bottom left corners. We can take things a step further and really have fine-grained control by providing four values. So let's imagine we wanted the top two corners to use 10 pixels and we wanted the bottom two corners to use 25 pixels. So this works in a clockwise fashion. This is the top left value, this is the top right value, bottom right, and bottom left. So if we save and refresh, we can see that the top two corners are using a 10 pixel radius and the bottom two corners are using a 25 pixel radius. Next, I want to talk about the exact shape of our rounded corners. So for simplicity, let's set this back to simply 10 pixels around all four corners. Now, until now, we've seen circular rounding, but we can also create elliptical rounding. So if we say 10 pixels / 25 pixels, we can see a different shape. So let's dissect how this new code with a / works. The first value is the horizontal radius, and the second value is the vertical radius for our rounding. So we can create unique shapes. Let's imagine that we increase the horizontal to 40 and reduce the vertical to 15. We can see that our rounded corner now uses 40 pixels horizontally to complete the curve, and only 15 pixels vertically to complete the curve. So that is an example of elliptical rounding. I, however, prefer circular rounding, so I will change this to simply 10 pixels. Now, speaking of the phrase circular, if I scroll down a bit, we can see a square box with a gray background that reads, "I wish I was a circle." So let's try an experiment. This box has a class of box B assigned to it, and in our style sheet we can see a rule here that corresponds with that element. For our experiment, let's see if we can use our border radius property to turn this square into a circle. So in our style sheet we can see that this box B element is receiving a width of 200 pixels and a height of 200 pixels. And if we want it to be a circle, that means the rounded corners should take up half of the available width and height. Half of 200 pixels is obviously 100 pixels. So if we save and refresh, you can see the square is now a circle because the border radius is taking up exactly half of the size of the element. So our experiment is complete. If we scroll down a bit, we find an additional experiment. So here is a dark gray box and it reads, "I wish I was an oval." That element has a class of box C. Here is the corresponding rule. So let's see if we can use the border radius property to turn this rectangle into an oval. Now in our CSS, we can see that this element is receiving a width of 350 pixels and a height of 200 pixels. Now we need to calculate a value for the border radius property, and I think this is a job for elliptical rounding, not circular rounding, because we need our rounded corner to take up more horizontal space than vertical space. Now we know to create elliptical rounding, we can provide two values. The first controls the horizontal, so half of 350 is 175. And then when it comes to the vertical size of our radius, we know that the element is 200 pixels tall, so half of that is 100 pixels. So 175/100 will create an elliptical rounding effect. So if we save and refresh, we have an oval. So with just a bit of arithmetic, we were able to create an oval and a circle with the border radius property. Now before we close out the lesson, I'll let you in on a secret. There's no need to perform that arithmetic. Instead of finding the perfect half values, we can simply provide a value of 50%, and the browser will take care of the rest. So we can do the same thing for our circle as well. Border radius, 50%. Now I recommend using 50% for a few reasons. One, you don't need to perform any arithmetic. And two, it keeps things flexible. So that way, even if in the future your width and height values of the element change, which will happen quite often if you're using responsive web design and media queries, you won't need to re-crunch the numbers for your border radius value in order to create the circle or oval effect. And that will bring this lesson to a close. So whether you're looking to create circles and ovals or simply soften the perfect 90-degree edges of your boxes, the border radius property is the tool for the job. I encourage you to experiment creating your own corner effects, and I will see you in the next lesson.
Created with free version for non-commercial use.